The day I walked into the boardroom, every head turned. My ex-husband's face froze when he saw me sitting at the head of his company's table, my name engraved on the brass plate that used to hold his. He blinked, swallowed hard, and whispered, "You?" "Yes, me. The woman," he said, "would never survive without him." And that day, I didn't just survive. I owned everything he built on my broken heart. But to understand how I got there, you need to know where it all began. Pause. If you've ever been underestimated, betrayed, or told you couldn't make it, stay with me. You'll want to hear this. Subscribe, because this isn't just a revenge story. It's about rebirth. My name is Clara. I'm 34 years old, and for 10 years I was the wife of a man named Ethan Clark. Back then, I was a corporate assistant, good at my job but quiet, invisible in the way kind people often are. Ethan wasn't. He was magnetic. A startup golden boy, charming, ambitious, always surrounded by admirers who laughed too loud at his jokes. We met at a networking event. He spilled coffee on my dress, apologized with a grin, and said, "Well, now I have to buy you dinner." I laughed. That's how it started. For years, I thought I'd married the love of my life. But what I really married was a man addicted to being the center of every room and allergic to anyone else's light. When I got promoted at my firm, Ethan smirked and said, "That's cute, babe. You're finally catching up." He said it like a joke, but the way he said it, slow, amused, it stung. And over time, I realized everything with him came with a sting. When I celebrated wins, he called them lucky breaks. When I worked late, he called me obsessed. When I spoke my mind, he called me emotional. At home, I became small. Ethan liked me that way, quiet, agreeable, orbiting around his ego. Then came the startup boom. Ethan's company, a sleek tech firm named Nexora, was suddenly everywhere. Featured in business magazines, interviewed on podcasts. He came home one night tossing his jacket onto the couch, buzzing with adrenaline. "We got new investors, Clara. This is it. This is our moment." He said our, but I knew he meant his. That night I made him dinner, his favorite risotto. He barely touched it, eyes glued to his phone. When I asked if he'd read the anniversary card I left in his briefcase, he smiled distractedly and said, "You know I love you, right? Don't make this about attention." That's when I learned that love, to him, was conditional. It existed only when I played the supporting role. Then, one night, the night everything changed, I found a message on his laptop. It was from his project manager, Lila. Short, blunt, intimate. Dinner was amazing. Next time, no work talk, just us. I stared at it until the words blurred. My hands shook. I wanted to believe it was innocent, that maybe I was paranoid, but I wasn't. When I asked him about it, Ethan didn't even flinch. He laughed. Actually laughed. "Clara, don't start drama. You always overthink everything. Overthink." That word again. The same word men use to dismiss women who see too much. But I wasn't overthinking. 2 weeks later, he came home late again, smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. And that night, while he showered, I checked his phone. Dozens of messages. Flirty, private, time-stamped during our anniversary dinner. That was the first time in my life I felt weightless, not in a good way. Like everything I was, wife, partner, believer, just vanished. When I confronted him again, he sighed like I was a nuisance. "Clara, I can't keep babysitting your insecurities. You'd fall apart without me, you know that?" He said it casually, walking away to pour himself a drink. That sentence burned itself into my memory. "You'd fall apart without me." I said nothing. But in that silence, something inside me shifted. The next morning, while he slept, I packed a bag. Not much, just clothes, my grandmother's necklace, and the flash drive with my digital portfolio. He didn't wake up when I left. He didn't even notice. I moved into a friend's spare room, started freelancing for small firms, anything to stay afloat. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Days turned into weeks. Ethan didn't call. Not once, but I started to rebuild quietly, fiercely. I networked online, landed contracts with mid-size companies, and poured every ounce of pain into progress. That pain? It became fuel. Every late night, every tear, every memory of him saying, "You'd fall apart without me," I turned it into strategy. Learning, growth. Then, a year later, I met someone who changed everything. Maya, a retired venture capitalist who had once been burned by her own husband in business. She looked at my presentation slides one afternoon and said, "Clara, you have something special. But you're still thinking small." That line hit me like lightning. Thinking small, because someone once made me feel small. So I started thinking bigger. I created my own consulting startup, small, remote, focused on helping struggling tech firms recover from bad management. And guess who had a long list of bad management clients? That's right, Nexora. Ethan's empire wasn't doing as well as he pretended. Investors were pulling back. Morale was collapsing. Rumors whispered of layoffs. And that's when I made my move. Soft pause. If you've ever been told you can't do something, let me tell you, that doubt is your weapon. I didn't knock when I entered Nexora's lobby. Marble floors, white orchids, a receptionist with a cool smile that said she'd been trained to spot wolves. I wasn't a wolf yet. I was something colder. A storm that looked like a clear day. "Appointment?" she asked. "With the board," I said. "Consulting review." Her eyes flicked to my name on the calendar. Clara Reeves. A pause, a subtle, sharp inhale. She knew who I used to be. She also knew who I wasn't anymore. An assistant guided me down a glass corridor that felt like walking through a museum of Ethan's ego. Product posters framed like art. Photos of him on magazine covers, a glass-etched quote on the wall. "Move fast. Break doubt." I smirked. He'd been breaking people, no doubt. The conference room doors parted. The board members sat in a measured line, tailored suits. Polished grief. The smell of stale coffee and the kind of fear that pretends to be strategy. Ethan sat at the head, the king of a paper kingdom, fingers drumming a rhythm he couldn't slow. His eyes met mine. For a second, he looked like a boy again, caught with his hand in the jar. Then the mask snapped on. Smooth, smiling. "Thank you for joining us, Clara," said the chairwoman, a hawk-eyed woman named Veronica Hale. "We appreciate your time." "I appreciate the opportunity," I said. "Let's fix what's broken." Ethan gave me a smile that had fooled investors, journalists, and me. "We've already identified a few areas of concern. We just need your paperwork." I'm not here to fetch coffee and binders, Ethan." My voice was quiet, but it carried. "I'm here to assess your culture, your contracts, and your cash burn. And then I'll tell you if the patient is dying." A hush fell over the room. Veronica's mouth twitched, approval disguised as neutrality. I slid a folder onto the table. A preliminary audit. Public signals. Leaked Glassdoor reviews. Subcontractor complaints. Average engineer tenure has dropped from 20 months to 8. And your CTO's last commit? I tapped the date. 6 weeks ago. He's not coding. He's polishing his resume. Someone exhaled too loudly. The assistant looked down. Ethan adjusted his watch. Veronica turned. "Is this accurate?" Ethan smoothed his tie. "We've had a few morale issues. Competitive market. Nothing unusual. I flipped to the next page. Then let's talk Project Aegis. The room stiffened. Good. I'd found a nerve. Aegis, I continued. Your flagship security tool. It's missing something. Not a feature, proof. You're selling promises attached to a quarterly roadmap that keeps slipping. Meanwhile, procurement emails show clients asking for case studies you don't have. Why? Because there are no real deployments, just pilots you call partnerships. A muscle in Ethan's jaw ticked. That's a gross oversimplification. Is it? I asked. Or is it the story you sell because the truth is messier than your press releases? Silence again, this time hungry. Veronica's gaze never left me. How do we fix it? I could feel Ethan watching me, searching for the old Clara, the one who softened endings and buffered blows. She wasn't here. You fix it by telling the truth, I said, and by cutting out the rot. Veronica looked at Ethan. We'll reconvene this afternoon. Clara, stay near. We'll need more. He didn't speak as the board filed out. When the door clicked shut, he leaned back, smiling without warmth. Look at you, he said softly. You practiced that in the mirror, didn't you? I folded my arms. I didn't have to. You taught me the script. Pretend your mistakes are strategies. You always liked dramatics, he said. It's cute when you try on power. I stepped closer. You said I'd fall apart without you. Did I? He laughed. You remember the funniest things. There it was, the man who turned apologies into jokes, pain into punchlines. For 1 second, the old ache flared. Then it died. I let it. Enjoy your morning, I said, reaching for the door. I'll see you after lunch. As I left, I passed Lila in the hall, the project manager with champagne texts and late-night promises. She looked surprised, then carefully blank. Clara, she said, didn't expect to see you here. Don't worry, I said. Your secrets are safe. For now, her cheeks colored. Behind her composure, I saw a young woman who had learned the cost of staying close to someone in freefall. I wanted to hate her, but my anger was older than she was. I kept walking. I ate lunch alone at a small cafe around the corner, a place with warm bread and quiet jazz where people pretended to be fine. I opened my notebook and made 3 columns: culture, contracts, cash. Under culture, I wrote, suction of ego, brittle loyalty, hush and shove. Under contracts, ghost deployments, ambiguous scope, and late vendor payments. Under cash, burn runway thin, creative accounting, bridge round myths. Maya called. How did your morning go? Like a fire test, I said. And the building is smoke? Good, Maya said. If they don't choke, they might listen. I hesitated. There's something strange about Aegis. Define strange. Like there's a layer I can't see. Not just a delay, an omission. Something scrubbed. Maya was quiet. Find the omission. It's never the missing number. It's the missing signature. I closed my eyes. Missing signature. I knew where to look. Back in the Nexora building, I didn't go to the boardroom. I went to legal. A man in shirt sleeves glanced up when I appeared. Can I help you? Clara Reeves, I said. Veronica asked me to review vendor agreements, especially Aegis partnerships. He frowned, then checked a note on his desk. Right, we were told to cooperate. I'm Daniel. He slid me into a glass cube and pulled a stack of digital files onto a screen. NDAs, pilots, vendor SOWs, contractor invoices. Show me the earliest Aegis vendor contributions, I said. The ones that claim core architecture support. He clicked through. They're Axiom Secure, a boutique firm with a paper trail that looked clean, too clean. SOWs without back and forth, invoices paid on round numbers, short descriptions that told me nothing. Who's the primary contact at Axiom? I asked. Daniel scrolled. A C. Winters. My heart thudded once. Not the name I expected. Cross-reference them with internal emails mentioning dependency blockers. He did. A thread surfaced. Ethan, Lila, CTO, and someone CC'd from a private domain. Quackswin. The domain was hidden behind a privacy service. Red flag, I said. Who approved this? Daniel looked uneasy. The CEO. The CEO who is also the majority signer on this vendor, I said, pointing. That's a conflict. I'm aware, he said tightly. But the board signed off under pressure. We were told Axiom was critical. Critical, I repeated. To what, the product? Or the facade? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Send me Axiom's bank wire confirmations, I said quietly. He did. I took one look and felt the room tilt. The recipient account had a familiar fingerprint. A trust structure I recognized. The kind of shell you learn to spot once you've been burned. Copy these, I said. Now, he hesitated. Is this legal? You have board authorization, I said. And if you don't, they'll give it when they realize what this means. He swallowed. I'll send the files to your secure drive. When the transfer finished, I stood. Daniel, keep your head down this week, please. Am I in trouble? You're in a truth, I said. That's usually worse. The board reconvened at 3. Veronica's gaze pinned me the minute I sat down. Ms. Reeves? I found something, I said, connecting my laptop to the display. A vendor named Axiom Secure. It's a shell that cycles Nexora's money into a trust connected to a private domain, overlapped with the CEO's authorization. The invoices are vague. The deliverables are non-existent. The bank routing fingerprints align with a pattern of concealed interests. A beat. Ethan's face didn't move. He was stone poured into a suit. Are you accusing me of theft? He asked calmly. I'm accusing you of lying, I said, and of paying a ghost to patch a product you can't build. He leaned forward. Watch your words. Why? I asked. You never did. Veronica cleared her throat. We need specificity. Specificity? I flipped to the ledger. Here's the wire schedule. Same day, end of quarter smoothing, suspiciously timed to investor check-ins. Here are the missing internal deliverables. Here's the signature trail, rubber stamped in 90 seconds. And here, I zoomed in, is the transfer memo on the second wire. It says debt recoup. Debt to whom? No one spoke. I turned to Ethan. To you? Hess smiled at me full of teeth. Conjecture. If you think you can bury me with this, you don't remember how the game works. I remember, I said, my voice suddenly soft. I remember perfectly. You don't bury someone with rumors. You bury them with receipts. For the first time, he looked rattled. Not because of the evidence. Because I wasn't the Clara in his head. Executive session, Veronica said sharply. Clara, step out. We'll call you back. I gathered my papers and stood. As I reached the door, Ethan's voice cut the air. You're not a hero, Clara, he said. You're an ex-wife playing detective. When this happens, it affects you too. You think investors won't ask why you're here? I turned back. Let them. I'm here because you taught me how to read a lie. His eyes flickered, something like fear warming to anger. You always wanted revenge. Admit it, I held his gaze. No, I wanted love. You taught me the difference. I stepped out into the hallway and let the door whisper shut behind me. I stood alone at the window, watching the city bleed into late afternoon. The glass reflected a woman I recognized only in fragments. My grandmother's necklace at my throat, my hair pulled back in the way I used to like before he called it too severe, my shoulders straight. Lila approached, hesitant. You found it, didn't you? What do you think I found? I asked. Her voice trembled in the smallest way. The part he keeps in the dark. He tells us everything is fine until the day it isn't. You knew about Axiom? She shook her head quickly. No, I suspected. Look, I'm not defending him. He makes you believe that the fire is a sunrise. He made me believe that. Then stop watching the horizon, I said gently. Pack your parachute, her eyes shone. You're going to destroy him. I'm going to tell the truth, I said. She nodded and slipped away. I closed my eyes for a breath. Veronica called me back in. The door clicked behind me like a judge's gavel. We're initiating a third-party forensic audit, she said. Effective immediately. Ethan opened his mouth, but she lifted a hand. You will comply, Mr. Clark. On what basis? He snapped. On the basis, Veronica said, that we like our CEO's solvent. A low current of dark amusement hummed around the table. Someone wasn't afraid anymore. Someone else had finally named the monster under the bed. I'll need access, I said, to vendor communications, engineering timelines, and escrow logs. Also, the last 2 quarters cap table changes. Granted, Veronica said. Ethan's jaw set. You're overreaching. And you're dragging my personal life into this. That is harassment, I met his eyes. Your personal life taught you to treat people like assets. That was your first corruption. He stood. We're done. No, Veronica said. You're benched. Effective now, you are on administrative leave pending the audit. Hand over your access cards. The room inhaled as one. Ethan didn't move. For a long second, Power tried to remember what it felt like to be inevitable. Then Veronica's security officer stepped forward, quiet as an apology. Ethan's hand shook once as he set the cards on the table, more tremor than temper. He walked past me without looking, cologne sharp, the ghost of old evenings trailing him like a lie. At the door, he paused, turned, and gave me a smile that had never reached his eyes. This isn't over, he said softly. It never is, I replied. For people who never finish what they start. He left. The board exhaled. Veronica rubbed her temples. Clara, stay with Daniel. Pull everything you can. We'll set up the auditors by morning. I nodded. As the board dispersed, one of the members, a quiet man with an accountant's patience, stopped by my chair. People like him thrive because no one wants to be first to say monster. You did. I said truth, I murmured. Same difference. On good days, he said and left. That night, I sat at my apartment desk, city lights blinking like timid stars. Files were loaded into my drive one by one. Vendor statements, off-book chat threads, screenshots from whistleblowers who finally felt safe enough to send them, and then, buried in a subfolder disguised as marketing collateral, I found the thing that turned yesterday's whisper into tonight's siren, a consent letter. A personal guarantee from me, Clara Reeves, authorizing an early Nexora credit line during the first year of our marriage, when I still shared a bank with Ethan and believed love meant blind trust. The signature looked like mine. Fluent. Swooped, but not mine. I never signed it. The date aligned with our anniversary dinner he'd missed for last-minute investors. The notary line was blank. I stared until the room sharpened into cold. He hadn't only betrayed me. He had imitated me, used my name like a spare key, slid it into a lock I didn't know existed, and turned it until it opened a debt he never planned to pay. My hands stopped shaking. They went still, the kind of still that comes right before glass breaks. I lifted my phone and called Maya. He forged my signature, I said. Used me as collateral before the company had legs. If the board sees this, he's finished. Maya's voice was steady. Are you safe? Yes. Then listen carefully, she said. You have leverage. Not just moral leverage, ownership leverage. If your guarantee anchored their early line, there's a path to a claim. You can negotiate from strength, I swallowed. You don't have to settle for watching him fall, she said. You can decide where he lands. I looked at the consent letter again. The edges were clean, the pixels crisp. He had always liked cleanliness, clear surfaces, empty counters, spotless lies. Tomorrow, I said. We move. Tomorrow, Maya agreed. Bring the sunrise. I put down the phone and printed the letter. The paper was warm in my hands. I slipped it into a folder with a tab that read, Returns. I stood by the window for a long time, watching headlights trace the streets. Somewhere across the city, Ethan was probably crafting a new story, a new version of me that made him the hero. That was the last indulgence I would ever give him, the belief that he could still edit me. I slid the folder into my bag, turned off the lamp and left the apartment in darkness. The kind you choose, not the kind you're pushed into. Tomorrow, we'll stop narrating and start directing. Morning arrived like a verdict. Gray sky, cold air, a kind of silence that doesn't wait, it listens. I dressed in black, not for mourning but for precision. Revenge isn't rage. It's focus with a heartbeat. I arrived at Nixora before sunrise. The lobby lights were dim, the world half asleep. Daniel met me with 2 coffees and a nervous smile. Veronica's in early, he whispered. The auditors land at 10. Good, I said. Then we move at 11, he blinked. Move? I smiled. Let's just say Ethan's kingdom has termites. Today we show them where they live. Veronica had granted me full forensic access, the kind of power most consultants never see. Overnight, I'd found 3 crucial threads. A forged consent letter linking my name to early funding. A shell vendor tied to Ethan's private trust. An unreleased patch of Nixora's Aegis software. One that quietly logged user data without disclosure. That 3rd thread was the spark. The others were gasoline, Maya called as I reviewed the files. You have enough to bury him, she said. What's your next move? Not bury, I said softly. Replace, she chuckled. Now you're thinking like a founder. I'd spent years orbiting Ethan's ambition. Today I was stepping into its center, but not to stay there. To burn it clean. At 9:50, the boardroom filled again. Reporters hadn't caught wind yet. That would come later. For now it was just power and panic, pretending to be patience. Veronica nodded at me. Clara, you're leading this session. The auditors are en route. I stood clicking the projector on. A slide appeared. The truth in numbers. The data, I began, doesn't lie. But men like Ethan teach it how to smile. A quiet laugh escaped from someone at the far end. Tension fractured just enough to breathe. I continued. Over the last 4 years, Nixora inflated its valuation using ghost deployments, hidden vendor payments, and forged guarantees. Here's how. I moved through the slides. Contracts, payment trails, side agreements disguised as sponsorships. The board leaned forward. Ethan wasn't in the room, but his ghost was. Then I pulled up the consent letter. My name appears here, I said. But I never signed it. The signature was traced from my old HR file. Metadata confirms it was imported from a scanned onboarding form. Used to authorize a personal guarantee for a $2 million bridge loan. Gasps. A pen dropped. Veronica spoke first. Are you saying... Yes, I said quietly. Your CEO forged his wife's name to get his company off the ground. The silence was heavy, the kind that bends metal. I took a breath. And he's still drawing payments from the same account that funded Axiom Secure, the shell he built to funnel investor money into his trust. Daniel stepped forward, handing Veronica a folder. Verified this morning. The trust is registered offshore. Ethan Clark is the controlling beneficiary. That was the moment it happened. The collective understanding that a man once worshipped had turned toxic. Veronica straightened. Freeze all outgoing transfers. Legal counsel will prepare statements. She turned to me. Clara, do you have the auditor's executive summary? Yes. I placed it on the table. But there's more. I clicked to the next slide. Project Aegis, unsanctioned logging module. This code snippet, I said, captures user metadata without explicit consent. It's buried under a false security tag. If regulators find this before you disclose it, you're not facing an audit. You're facing federal charges. Gasps again. Sharper this time. Who wrote this? Someone asked. I looked straight into the camera feed. Ethan Clark. The door burst open. Ethan strode in, security badge still in hand, eyes bloodshot, face carved in fury. You think you can hijack my company? He spat. You're nothing, Clara. You're a parasite feeding off my work. Veronica's voice cut through the air. You're trespassing, Mr. Clark. He ignored her, marching toward me. You think you're clever? You destroy me, you destroy the company. You destroy your own name. My name? I said quietly. You already destroyed that when you forged it. He froze, eyes narrowing. You can't prove every transaction, I said, sliding a printed packet toward him. Every line. Every lie. Signed by you. He glanced at the documents, then back at me. You'll regret this. No, I said. You will. The auditors entered. 2 women and a man in gray suits. Perfect timing. Veronica motioned them to sit. Mr. Clark, one said calmly. We've been retained by Nixora Holdings. We'll need your immediate cooperation. He laughed bitterly. You people don't understand. This company is me. Not anymore, Veronica replied. Effective immediately, the board has voted to suspend you indefinitely. All accounts frozen pending review. Ethan's jaw clenched. You'll sink without me, I smiled. We'll rebuild, just without the rot. He stared at me for a long time. Not as a man looking at an enemy, but at something he couldn't control. That, more than the evidence, broke him. Enjoy it while it lasts, he hissed. You're still the woman who begged me to believe in her. I stepped closer. And you're still the man who couldn't believe in anyone but himself. Security escorted him out. His footsteps echoed like punctuation marks. The next 48 hours blurred into crisis control. Lawyers, auditors, press drafts. Every click of a pen sounded like a countdown. Daniel helped me trace ownership clauses buried in old term sheets. That's when we found it. A clause that gave the original guarantor, me, conversion rights. Maya explained it on a late-night call. Technically, Clara, your forged guarantee gives you a legal claim to a portion of the company. If you file correctly, you could assume controlling interest once the fraud is proven. I blinked. You mean, you can buy him out without spending a cent? She said. Justice via paperwork. The universe has a strange sense of humor. The board met again 3 days later. Veronica gestured for me to sit at the head. Clara, she said, we need stability. Investors are nervous. The product is solid, but the scandal isn't. We can either shut down or restructure under new leadership. I looked at her. And you want me to lead? You're the only person with both the knowledge and the moral leverage, she said. And her mouth twitched, almost smiling. The investors trust you more than him. I hesitated. It's poetic, isn't it? I rebuild what he corrupted. Poetry, she said, is just truth that learned to dress well. I nodded slowly. Then let's begin the cleanup. Step 1. Freeze personal trust accounts. Step 2. Claim the forged consent. Step 3. Transfer conversion rights under their stitution law. By the end of the week, I legally owned 51% of Nexora. When I told Maya, she laughed. See, you didn't need revenge. You needed receipts. I laughed too, though it came out softer, sadder. He'll never see it that way. Good, she said. Let him choke on the silence. The press gathered in Nexora's main hall. Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered. I stood behind the podium, the same one Ethan had used to announce funding rounds to boast about our future. Good afternoon, I began. My name is Clara Reeves. I'm the acting CEO of Nexora Technologies. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I continued. Recent investigations have uncovered financial misconduct and data misuse under previous leadership. Those responsible are being held accountable. But today isn't about downfall. It's about rebuilding trust. I paused, breathing in the silence that followed. For too long, success stories have hidden the people who made them possible. The assistants, the coders, the quiet ones who kept showing up even when no one said thank you. This company will now be built for them, by them. Applause. Cameras clicked like thunder. In the back of the hall I saw him, Ethan, half shadowed by the doorway, flanked by security, watching. His face was unreadable. I didn't look away. I didn't need to. Later that night, I sat alone in the CEO's office. My office now. The desk was polished, the view magnificent, the same skyline I used to see through tears. There was a photo still left in the drawer. Our wedding day. He in a gray suit. Me laughing, eyes closed, wind in my hair. I traced the edge once, then slid it into the shredder. Closure isn't fire. It's quiet. That night, a courier arrived at Ethan's condo with a single envelope. Inside was a letter, typed cleanly on Nexora letterhead. Effective immediately. All prior privileges, shares, and access rights under the Clark Guarantee are hereby revoked. Restitution and penalties will follow pending final audit. C. Reeves, CEO. He read it under Adam kitchen light. The letter trembled slightly in his hands. He looked up, and for the first time in his life, there was no one left to impress. Maya called the next morning. How does it feel? Strange, I admitted. Like finishing a book that wrote me first. She laughed softly. Then write the sequel. I looked out the window, sunlight breaking through the fog. The Nexora logo gleamed on the building across the street. Not as a monument to him, but as a mirror to me. Revenge hadn't resurrected me. It had revealed me, and for the first time in years I felt alive. Victory doesn't sound like fireworks. It sounds like silence. The kind that settles after years of noise, arguments, gaslighting, applause that never reached your heart. 3 weeks after the board coup, Nexora felt different. The walls that once echoed with Ethan's charm were quieter now. The employees more cautious, like they were waking up from a long, bright nightmare. I walked through the open floor one morning. Eyes followed me, not with fear, but with something softer, relief. Morning, Ms. Reeves. Welcome back. Coffee? The real kind, not the burnt startup stuff. I smiled. The real kind. It had been a long time since I tasted anything real. The investigation wrapped faster than anyone expected. Ethan's name hit the news. Tech visionary exposed in financial scandal. His interviews disappeared overnight. Investors released careful statements about new leadership and transparency. He'd lawyered up, of course. Tried to spin it as a misunderstanding. Claimed I'd forged evidence to ruin him, but the digital trails told another story. Cold, time-stamped, irrefutable. When the government froze his offshore accounts, he sent me a single email. No greeting. No subject. Just one line, you win. I hope you're happy, I didn't reply. Happiness wasn't the word for what I felt. It was something quieter, heavier. Peace mixed with pity. Because I realized something. When you spend your life building lies, truth isn't punishment. It's exposure. The mirror moment one night I stayed late at the office. The city lights painted long gold streaks across the glass. I walked into the CEO suite, my suite, and for the first time didn't feel like an imposter in my own story. There was a mirror by the window. I stood in front of it and whispered, "You survived." Not just him. The doubt, the humiliation, the smallness he built around me brick by brick. For years I thought I had to destroy him to be free. But standing there I realized I didn't win because he lost. I won because I stopped needing him to see me. A few days later, a message came from Veronica. Ethan's lawyers requested a private meeting. Optional, but it might help with closure. Closure. The word that sounds like an ending but feels like a test. Against every instinct, I agreed. We met at a neutral space, a corporate mediation room with too much glass and not enough warmth. He looked older. Not dramatically, just the way arrogance ages, unevenly. His eyes were tired, his suit a little too crisp, like he'd ironed confidence over guilt. "Clara," he said, standing. "You look good. Better than you expected?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "Always had that sharp tongue." "And you," I said, "always had a short memory." He sat, folding his hands. "I didn't call this meeting to fight. I wanted to understand." "Understand what?" "How it all turned into this," he said quietly. "We were good once." I almost laughed. Good. That word again. The bandage people use to cover their knife marks. "We were convenient," I said. "You liked my loyalty. I liked the version of you I thought existed." He looked down. "I lost everything, Clara." I met his eyes. "So did I. The difference is I rebuilt." He hesitated. "Are you here to watch me fall?" I shook my head. "No, Ethan. I came to make sure you know that you don't live rent-free in my head anymore." He looked confused. "Then what do you want?" "Nothing," I said simply. "That's the point." For a moment we both sat in silence. The air between us was heavy with every unsaid apology, every ghost of what might have been. Then I stood. "Goodbye, Ethan." He opened his mouth to speak, but I didn't wait to hear it. As I walked away, I realized closure doesn't come from what they say. It comes from finally not needing their words to mean anything. Weeks turned into months. Nexora slowly became something new, transparent, ethical, alive. We launched a program called Restart, giving scholarships to women in tech who had left careers due to toxic workplaces. It became the company's heart, not its product. The media began to write a new story. The woman who rebuilt the company that tried to break her. I didn't read most of them. Fame was Ethan's drug, not mine. But one article quoted me correctly. "Sometimes survival isn't staying alive. It's learning to live without fear." That line stuck. People started quoting it online, sharing it under posts about resilience. Every time I saw it, I smiled quietly, because I had meant every word. One evening, I visited my grandmother's old cottage, the one she left me in her will. I hadn't been there since before the divorce. The garden had grown wild, vines curling around the porch like memories refusing to leave. I made tea, sat on the steps, and watched the sunset melt into the horizon. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about what came next, Maya called. "You disappeared again," she teased. "Just breathing," I said. "Good," she replied. "Don't let success become another cage." I laughed softly. "I won't. I finally know the difference between freedom and revenge. What's the difference? Freedom, I said, is when you stop waiting for their apology. A week later, an envelope arrived at my home address. No return name, but I knew the handwriting. Inside was a single page. Clara, I'm leaving the country. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to tell you something. You were the only part of my life that was ever real. I broke it because I didn't know how to keep something pure. You were right. I don't believe in anyone but myself. But if you ever wonder whether you mattered, you did. I read it once. Then again. Then folded it neatly and placed it in a drawer next to my grandmother's necklace. Some truths don't need to be answered. They just need to rest. A year later, Nexora had become a symbol of rebirth. Investors returned. The new team thrived. But the real victory wasn't the company. It was me, the woman who finally saw herself as more than what she endured. When people asked about Ethan, I told them the truth. He taught me the cost of silence. I paid it once. Never again. Some nights I still dream of that boardroom, the shock on his face, the quiet power in mine. But it's no longer revenge that plays in my mind. It's clarity. If you've ever been told you couldn't survive without someone, if you've ever been made small so someone else could feel big, if you've ever looked at the ruins of your old life and thought, maybe this is it. It's not. You are not what they said. You are what you build after they're gone. And sometimes, rebuilding starts with one decision, to stop proving and start living. So if you've felt that, if you've lived that, or if you're standing at the edge of your own fire right now, subscribe, stay a while, and let's remind the world, survival isn't the ending. It's the beginning.